Hi guys, welcome back to this video series. This is video 4. In this video I'm going to be talking about compression. And yeah, it's quite hard to fully understand compression, but once you get compression, you're pretty much ahead of most people and you'll be flying because you'll get most concepts. So yeah, so I'm firstly going to talk about the bass drum. So as you can see, I have a compressor on this. Now compressors, there's loads of different types. There's VCAs, there's DBXs. Like if I go through my list, I have quite a lot of compressors. Like you can see, I have loads. But yeah, there's loads of stock ones as well. What DAW you're using. So Studio One has loads. Logic has loads. What other ones are there? Cakewalk. Any of these softwares have loads of free compressors, but I do find, especially I like about this Eteria one, is it's very easy to understand and know exactly what's going on. With a lot of compressors, you don't really know what's going on, and I think that's the problem with compression in general. So I'm really going to break down this compressor, and I'm going to talk a bit about what I did on each individual track. And yeah, so first of all, I'm going to bypass the compression and just play the bass drum. Now I'm going to play with the compressor. Because you can see the beefiness is really there. So what you want to do, so threshold, right, everyone makes this really complicated. In every good compressor there should be 3 dots. I know in the DBX style it's slightly different, but basically when it gets to red, the above, that's what you don't want. You want this to be flashing yellow. So if I go through this, if I cycle through this and just solo this, and if I go like say here, you can see it's way too much. You don't want that. Now this compression is the amount of compression you want, so it's always done in a ratio. Now again, there's some settings that will do like 10 to 1, 6 to 1, 4 to 1. I generally wouldn't go over anything, usually say 4 to 1. I think 1.5, those the sweet spot. Then attack is the amount you want. Release is where you want the compressor to release. And then the peak stop, so again this is only on some compressors, is basically if you want it to stop at a certain point. Like a lot of people might set that to 0. The limiter is how much if you want. So yeah, it affects your output gain. So say if you want it louder, you turn that up. If you want it quieter, you turn that down. Most of the time when I use compression, I want basically the audio to be squeezed down to a smaller waveform but to be turned up, because especially in drums there's a lot of parts where you'll play a lot louder. There's a lot of dynamics in drums. So yeah, you do, and that's where compression gets tricky. You want to be able to show the dynamics, but at the same time you don't want to make it to the point where it's just really loud at one point and really quiet at one point. So yeah, it's quite hard to get right. But yeah, that's the basics of the bass drum. Now there's also presets if you find this complicated or whatever. If I go, is there presets on this one? I'm actually not too sure. No, okay, so there's no presets. Oh no, there is. Yeah, so like if I say kick in, that can give me a preset, and you can see it's actually quite similar to what I've done I just changed the compression rate a bit, but other than that, it's pretty identical. So yeah, there's presets there if you find it easier. But I do think you should learn to do it yourself, because you really learn when you make mistakes. Right, the next one I'll talk about is the snare. So this is the same concept I've done something very similar. So voice solo, this snare. So you can see at the start, there's actually no compression even happening. But it's really when it hits there. So this is actually quite a tricky one, because there's cross stick at the start and then there's snare. If you really wanted to dive into this and do it properly, you'd probably set it up into two different tracks. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to make it easy enough. So yeah, pretty much the same thing going on. These are just, yeah, if you really want to say it's a snare, so you want to really enhance the 250 hertz range, you can go to the frequency sweeper, go to 250 and turn up the gain, a bit like an EQ. And yeah, that's pretty much those two done. And then the final one, which is the overhead. Again, I'm just going to do one of these because the same process for each. So again, this is actually a bit different. So the levels incoming of this are obviously slightly different, are they? Yeah. So yeah, pretty similar. Again, this threshold, I think the other one was about -10. This one is just up a bit because slightly lower volume. If I listen to this, again, it's not really happening the compression yet until it reaches this point. I could go more if I wanted to. That's a complete style thing. You see, it's not gone red yet, but if I go there, it's too much. So yeah, that's pretty much the compression. Now, I might show you is, if you want to get fancy, always set up a drum bus, right? So buses in any DAW, I've briefly gone over buses in previous videos, but every DAW is different to set them up. In Pro Tools, you create a new channel by going Control-Shift-N, and you go stereo, you go aux input, you set up a bus that way. Or if you want to be really efficient, you can set up a new folder and then call it that name, and then route everything. So as you can see here on my output, I've routed all my outputs to bus 1 and 2, and then this is my bus 1 and 2, the drum bus. So yeah, I think that's important. But as I was saying, if you want to go really fancy, I'd recommend some kind of, just overall EQ. I'm basically using this as EQ and a bit of compression, just to kind of make it sound good. I know this is a mastering plugin, and I said I'd go and master in the next video, which I will, but basically this is just enhancing the sound. I wouldn't call this the mastering stage just yet. So yeah, so you can just sweep around with some frequencies. This is doing the overall sound. So if you think overall there's too much bass drum, find the hertz, 128 hertz or whatever it is, turn it down. And yeah, that's pretty much this video done. So in the next video, the final video, I'm going to be talking about mastering just briefly, because it's very confusing and honestly takes a long time to fully understand what the hell mastering is. But I'm going to briefly go over it, and just so you have enough to work on what you need to do, because you don't need to know an awful lot. But if you want to know an awful lot, I suggest watching a load of videos on mastering. There's a few good people who do it, a few good YouTubers, because it is quite a complicated topic. But yeah, see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.